everybody, and welcome back to Shatter Our Souls with Novaria. Now, last time we started the third attempt of the challenge run. This time I'm taking it a lot slower, a lot more steady and consistently because I am done doing this challenge multiple times in a row. It's I would like to show off more than just hunting skags, if you get what I'm going for. So, today we are aiming to tackle the second boss of the game, Bonehead, as well as a series of side missions. We've been here down this line before. I've said it all. I've done it before. It's not a huge issue. But regardless of the consistency of it, I'd still like to be very cautious and state outright what I am aiming for. Now, I want to talk a little bit about probably one of the finest arts in gaming today, and that art is actually speedrunning. Speedrunning in and of itself is a very unique challenge. It is different than almost any other form of gaming that is currently available for the public. Some people play games to do just challenges like I do. See how far they can push the limits of the game in a more, shall I say, provincial. No, that's not the right word. In a more relaxed setting, shall we say. The challenge itself is more about seeing how far I can push myself and how good I can personally be at the game. But speed runs, similar to challenge runs, are about pushing the game, pushing yourself to be better. But where challenge runs and speed runs differ, where their major problem goes about, the major differences between these two actually boils down to um, the goal. The goal of a speed run is pretty simplistic. You want to beat the game, but you want to do it in the fastest means possible. The end goal is all about speed. How you go about that speed, how you go about building that up. Well, that takes time, practice, and a understanding of the game in and of itself that is far beyond what a challenge runner like myself would do. Example of this is actually one of the older games from the Super Nintendo era, the Super Mario World. Originally, people had to play the entire game. Now, a fairly early on, people realized that there was a back route into Bowser's Castle, which they could access fairly early on, actually. Um, and the back route offered an option for them to beat the game in under an hour, which that's not too bad. Under an hour is pretty standard time frame for a speed run these days. But in 2015, a series of glitches were found that allowed the players to beat um, Super Mario World in less than 5 minutes. Now, on its own, that is an incredible boost. These this series of speedrun events have now made it possible to beat the game in under 45 seconds. And all of it based on frame perfect input data, frame perfect everything. It's absolutely ridiculous what is actually required of this challenge. But now, beating the game and getting to the end credits is easier than ever. And yet, this particular means of getting there is so ridiculous and out there that virtually nobody will be able to access it. Thus, we reach the epitome of a speedrun. Um, Within the Borderlands community, speedrunning has been a thing. Speedrunning Borderlands 2 is now, I think, in the under an hour category. But what makes a Borderlands speedrun so unique comparatively to some of the later game challenge or some of the other challenges out there are that the Borderlands challenges are all about beating your opponent as quickly as possible and not really thinking about the alternatives, the backtracking, etc. The less you have to do of the game, the better, but it means that you have to have insane luck right off the bat. And that insane luck is only going to get you so far under ordinary circumstances. So, that's kind of what I'm getting at with this particular mentality is that speedrunning in and of itself has become an art form about knowing more than just the basics of your game. It's knowing every individual aspect of it inside and out, down to how the code functions. Thus, because I don't have the brain power to handle that kind of challenge in its fullest extent, I tend to aim towards challenge runs because challenge runs, I can use as much code and information as I would like, but it's about pushing myself more than it is about pushing the game. Speedrunners use certain aspects that could potentially crash the game halfway through. And that just to me defeats the purpose of the game. Like, yes, you're pushing it to its absolute limits, but push the game to its absolute limits only does so much in my mind. Anyways, as I'm sure you just saw, I took down Nine Toes again. Because Nine Toes is a boss enemy, he offers a lot more experience for the player over a longer span of time, making him a decent stopping point in the early game to defeat a couple different times. That way, we're not constantly starved for experience. However, there is more to it than just how. There's a little bit of a method to my madness when it comes to this. First of all, we're going to let the skag beat us. I know. Deathless challenge, why am I doing it this way? Come on, hit me. Hit me with your best shot. Really? All right. Well, I was actually aiming on using the resurrection system to heal because I don't have a shield yet. But it seems like the game has other plans for me because it keeps trying to heal me. All right. So with all of that in mind, I think it's time to tackle Scar, as well as a couple other side quest missions because let's face it, the more experience the better. Perfect, perfect. Now, if you're aiming to do this yourself, there are numerous options that are available to you right off the bat. Tend to enjoy going with the try to tackle every single aspect of an area before moving on to the next, because the tasks that are offered in each section are all building on one another in some capacity. You're not going to be able to make it through by the seats of your pants the first time that you enter Skag Gully. It's just not feasible. But after beating 9 toes, well, you could make it, but it's not easy. After beating Scar, once again, you can make it, but it's a heck of a lot easier once you're about level 8 to 10, based on the recommendations of the game. I don't necessarily like the idea of the level recommendation system because there are some missions that are labeled as tough or high level challenges that really don't amount to much. And there are others that you're going to want to pay attention to it because if you don't, you're going to fall fairly quickly. By the seats of your pants is one that if you don't pay attention, you will get wrecked early. Oh, wow. I didn't realize I got this guy so far out. Oh well. And boop. Pop. Okay, making progress. I'm not absolutely starved for ammunition. I'm not running out of health. I think this is going to be a fairly good start here. Bingo. Other challenges, I guess, when it comes to this kind of stuff, there's like time trials, time challenges. There's also stuff like, oh, pacifist challenges where you choose not to defeat any enemies as much as possible. The pacifist challenges are definitely um a unique way of going about it. Because if you only have to fight bosses, only fighting enemies that are absolutely necessary, you're going to be playing the game in a very different manner than what I am. This right now is a more. This challenge that I have is very simply a pure skill challenge. There's nothing in it that makes the challenge all that much more difficult aside from the skill required to complete it. But that being said, the skill required to complete it is significantly higher than a standard run. Because a standard run allows you to stop at any point in time, walk back, gain experience. If you fall, you get back up, you just incur a little bit of a penalty when it comes to cash. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is getting ridiculous. Get him, blood. Oh, sure, now I hit it. Um, but stuff like that. Challenges like the Titanfall 2 challenge, where I aimed to beat the game without using any bullets, as Cooper specifically, because there are ways, as their kit of a Titan is far different. And unfortunately, fist fighting as a Titan just doesn't typically work. That's the thing. Doing that kind of thing, testing what I can actually get away with, is impressive. It changes the dynamic of the game and makes it fresh. It makes it new again to some extent. because it changes the dynamic of the game, you can find totally new ways to play it, totally new challenges. How does one beat a long range enemy with only shotguns? Well, maybe it relies more heavily on a different type of weapon, a different type of playstyle. Who knows? And that's the thing, is every character and playstyle in this type of game is 100% warranted. Every single one of them is unique and has its own challenges and perspectives that you can gain on it. And some challenges will be more difficult for different players. I'm not a player who likes sniper rifles, never have. So, being the sniper player in this challenge is honestly kind of on the frustrating side at times because I know that if I get up close and personal with my enemies, I'm done. My challenge is over. So, stuff like that I'm finding more often lately. But yeah. Another common challenge that I tend to see, there are some that specify on specific weaknesses or going above and beyond in certain aspects. There are some that are removal type challenges, like I tend to do. Some challenges are more like speed runs. Some challenges are all about getting to the end as with the minimum number of defeated enemies, only using certain aspects. Maybe it's all about using stealth, protecting yourself in a way that is unorthodox. Because if you're only using stealth and a perfect stealth mission or a perfect stealth game, then you're going to have a different outcome, a different set of skills required to complete it. Which is simply to say, it's all fun and games. High score runs. When playing games that are all about score or that have a scoring system, how much how high can you actually get your score because each run of the game could theoretically increase the score, increase the points you've earned. Like arcade style games have always had that. And sometimes it's as simple as, oh, I need to beat it faster. And sometimes it's, oh, I need to collect more stuff, more money, more this, more that to increase my score. Every setup is viable in that regard, but every time you try to challenge yourself to do better, you're going to find that the game itself is entirely different than your prior attempts. Ugh, cool. And there are times like this where I question if this is a challenge at all. And it's simply because every game has a different set of skills that are required. Every challenge has a different set of skills that are required. Maybe you require better help with strafing or tackling squishy enemies, bullet sponges. And that's all well and good. I think my game is starting to glitch because the number of skags that have been doing that today is kind of unorthodox. Also, I think, truthfully, that rack hives are just highly evolved skags because they're building or their makeup is very similar to what a Skag's body style is. It's just larger and has developed a, well, they're larger, they have a lower sense of sight, but the holes in their back, their shoulders and chest, instead of them being simple, oh yes, thank you, a healing shield. I'll keep the healing shield, but I don't necessarily need it right now. The setup on a rack hive is that its lungs and body effectively are used as a breeding ground for the racks, which is kind of disgusting, but whatever. But its body composure and makeup is very similar to that of a skag. I'd say probably it's a significantly larger breed, but they would probably come from a similar background. Awesome. Yeah, I don't know. There are so many different thoughts that can come down from these types of games, from genetics to evolution, epidemiology, you name it. All sorts of sciences can be applied to video games, and part of it is because video games and their creators, the creators tend to try to involve some level of science or pseudoscience into the games, because a lot of things out there, like I'm going to use a age-old type of show. An old sci-fi show actually started with science fiction, but through the efforts of people actually attempting to see what they could accomplish, actually made technology from Star Trek a reality. It's just one of multiple things that kind of I find interesting about science fiction in itself is that sometimes the things created in science fiction are totally unreal at the time of their conception. But by the time that, but become commonplace within a decade after, because the idea, the thought of it actually came to fruition. Because people actually took the time to think about what it was that they were creating. How would it actually work? Which I think is a pretty cool thing about science fiction and this type of situation in general. But, you know, here we are. Science fiction, science reality, video games, and the like. Every little piece of history, every piece of lost art could theoretically be brought to a new light in a new medium. Anywho, I've been rambling for long enough. I'm going to meet you over at the next area. So, all the missions so far have been completed. I've had a couple minor close calls, but nothing serious. The enemies in this area now offer absolutely nothing. So it is time to move further down the line. We're going to pass back TK's leg as well as all the side quests for him, and then we're going to beat Bonehead. Now, as expected, Bonehead is going to be much the same as before. Hide in the back, you know, defeat him in relatively short span of time. Where I'm going to differ for now actually comes in. I don't need that. I do want that. I'm going to keep that one on just so that I have a backup. Is that more or less I'm going to extend the mission or this video a little bit longer just so that next time I can jump straight into tackling the side quests easier without having to start with the very basics again. And yeah, so here we go. One thing I find about Borderlands and its difficulty is that the early game has a very steep difficulty curve. If you're not prepared for a given area, it's going to absolutely mop you. But if you are prepared, there's really nothing the game can throw at you that can actually defeat you, per se. Now, the result of a lot of this is that you're going to end up in situations where you are under leveled at one moment, you take 5 seconds and you're over leveled. That's a pretty common occurrence and one that I personally prefer to avoid, but be that as it may. So we've now spec'd into a different heal skill called Riotous Remedy. Riotous Remedy allows me to heal over time my main HP pool over time instead of it being a instant heal. But in order to access it, I need to defeat enemies. So it's kind of a win-lose situation. I'm not going to end up with as good of healing at any given point as what I would have gotten for using Bloodwing's heal skill. But I think it's going to be more consistent, and I'm not going to end up with situations where I'm going for long periods of time without any heal whatsoever. Anyways, we are going to turn this in, jump over Pisswash Gulch, open up the side door, and then we are going to start the next video next time. All right. We've jumped the hurdle. All right. I dislike when they do that, but be that as it may, whole bunch of new missions at the bounty board. There we go. Come on. Work with me. There we go. And with that, hang on. Hey, stop moving. Perfect. And with that, we reach the end of today's video. If you like what you see or are curious about what comes next, drop a like, leave a follow, and join in next time. Until then, have a good one.